Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglen. Welcome back to another stock market outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. And once again this week we saw a divergence between the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq and most tech stocks. The Nasdaq is stuck below the 50 for now and is below that key 21 EMA. While if we go over to the S&P 500, you can see it's well above that key moving average, the 50 here, and found support at the 21 on Friday. So overall, this index is holding up much better. And tech in general is showing a bit of weakness despite some rally attempts last week. So in this video, we'll go through the usual market indexes. We'll talk about the trades I made this past week and also discuss how my previous watchlist performed, sentiment, the IBD Big Picture article, and also the GMI signal from richardlmoglen.com. So down right in, let's start with the trades I made this past week. Overall, I did try some stuff on this day right here, this Friday. The gap down recovery provides some pretty good low risk entries, but overall I was stopped out of everything that I tried during this past week. So really that's feedback that what I'm trying isn't quite working and that conditions aren't quite right for my style of trading. So overall Bumble was a promising IPO that I'll still be watching, but it did kind of break expectations on this Thursday. So overall on this day, this Friday, I tried it. You can see my calls right here, 67.66. It was holding up well. I was watching to see if it could challenge this point and this point right here. But on this day, it was actually a 3-bar break, meaning that there was some consolidation. And then in 1 bar, it broke through all that support here. And that's basically when I got out at about 68.96. Actually, my stop was at 68.89 is when it triggered. So this is the bar that I got out. So basically a small gain. Overall, last week I made some money, not that much, and honestly, it probably wasn't worth the effort. Really, when stuff is choppy, when tech isn't right, and the Nasdaq is still below the 50, my style of trading doesn't work too well, and I'm trying to do as little as possible, manage my risk very tight, and trade smaller than usual until really conditions improve and we start to trend once again. And next up, we've got Etsy, which I started my position last week on Friday. I bought basically the opening range breakout where it moved down and then retook the 50. That's why I put on my position at 209.3. And then on this day, it really kind of broke expectations because of this gap up and then kind of negative outside day here, potentially indicating a trend change. So I think I sold about half my position at 212.50. And then the rest on this gap down as it moved through my stop. And overall on this trade, I think I lost about 0.15, 0.2%. So a very small loss of my total portfolio. And really that's what I'm trying to do during these conditions. If I am trading, if I am testing trades, try to get that stop up to break even, take a little bit off earlier, and really manage those positions very tightly because market conditions aren't quite right. So you either want to sit on your hands and wait for better conditions, or if you do trade, trade smaller and be a little bit stricter with your risk. So that is Etsy. And next up, we also tried Snap here. And I bought it once again on that kind of turnaround off the 50 SMA. It was acting well. And then this Thursday, it moved all the way down and stopped me out about 59.4 below this day's low. So I liked how it was acting on this Wednesday, but then once again, it broke expectations. I wanted a nice inside day here. So I sold it as it cut under this low here and hit my stop. And then this day was pretty much just a kind of nothing day against the 50. It's still under that key moving average as of now. But I think this definitely could shape up and present another potential opportunity and setup if it really tightens up once again. And lastly, in a similar vein, we've got Twitter. And I started this on the inside day, added as it broke out above this high. But once again, we get a little bit of an expectation breaker on Tuesday and then a nice recovery on this Wednesday. But once again, I wanted this to be an inside day and basically it undercut my stop, stopped me out a little bit above my cost here and broke below this low as well. And then some continuation to the downside on this Friday. So overall, doesn't look too bad because it is consolidating on below average volume. But something isn't quite right for my style right now, which is why I'm really cutting things very quickly and trying to move my stops up into the green as soon as possible. So at this moment, I am completely in cash. I will be potentially looking for extra setups next week if they do present good buying opportunities. But as of right now, I'm still being cautious, starting with smaller than usual positions and really trying to manage that risk very, very closely to prevent kind of drawdowns to the downside. So I don't want to be chopped up into a million pieces with small paper cuts adding up over and over. So really, I don't want to get aggressive until the QQQ gets back above the 21 and 50 SMA. And speaking of the Qs, let's take a look at it day by day. And overall, we had a slight gap up on Monday. It moved down and then a very strong close, retaking the 21 EMA and closing above this high, which was a good sign. Then this Tuesday here was a little bit of stalling action. You can see we gapped up, moved all the way up here, but then didn't have the greatest closing range. And on this Wednesday, as we saw with a lot of growth stocks as well, we had a gap down, but then a strong recovery. And then Thursday, we had a gap down and then a continued kind of selling day here, which wasn't a positive sign, undercutting this low as well as this one as well. Then on Friday, we did have a little bit of support action. We are still not really in an uptrend just yet because we aren't above this high. But you can see we have the start of something with a nice upside reversal. I would really like to see this kind of retake the 21 and 50 SMA next week or as soon as possible. And from this bar, the expectation is sideways or higher. But from the weekly bar, if we go to a weekly chart, you can see we had a pretty poor closing range, and overall we were down 0.74% with a weekly closing range of 23.9% and a daily closing range on Friday of 68.6%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower. And overall, we are still in a stage 2 uptrend since we are above that 30-week moving average, but we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. And moving on to the SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, you can see overall we are down 1.16% with a weekly closing range of only 21.2% and a daily closing range on Friday of 52.7%. The expectation from this bar is sideways or lower. I like that we're still above the 10-week moving average, which is rising, and we are overall in a nice stage 2 uptrend. And taking a look at the IWM, overall we are down 2.85% with a weekly closing range of 34.5% and daily closing range on Friday of 70.6%. The expectation from this bar is sideways or lower. It's a nice inside bar, I believe, unless actually we did have a slight overshoot of this high, so this isn't an inside bar. And overall, we are above a nice rising 10-week and 30-week moving average. And next up, we've got SMH, the semiconductors, and overall, we were positive on the week, up 1.21%, but we did finish pretty far from the highs here, and we were rejected at the 10-week. And overall, the weekly closing range was 35.4%, the daily closing range on Friday was 70.5%, and the expectation from this weekly bar is sideways or lower, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Next up, we've got the VIX, which basically undercut all of these and then finished higher. So I might expect a big shoot up here next week sometime. But overall, it was up on the week, up 1.26% with a weekly closing range of 47.4%. Moving on, we've got Ethereum, and overall, we had an inside week here. And this is a potential kind of mini cup and handle here, although it's definitely not proper. So more like a double bottom, with this being the pivot. But overall, we were up 0.79% with a weekly closing range of 27.9%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower, but it is a nice inside week at the 10-week moving average. And next up, we've got Bitcoin, GBTC, and overall, this is up 5.91% with a weekly closing range of 82.6%. The expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a nice stage 2 uptrend. And lastly, we've got the FFTY, which overall was down 0.53% with a weekly closing range of 42.6%. The expectation from this bar is sideways or lower, although we are finding support at the 10-week at this point. So overall, looking at the indexes, it's still a little bit mixed. A lot of the expectations are sideways or lower because of the poor closing ranges on the QQQ, the SPY, the IWM, as well as these down here below. But overall, we'll see what happens. We still are in a longer-term stage 2 uptrend. And moving on to the next potential true market leaders, this list is still under construction 100%, and let me know if there's anything I should add or take away from this list. But as of right now, these are kind of the stocks that I'm really trying to focus in on and potentially find setups and entries due to them showing some type of RS during this more kind of turbulent time for growth. So going through the charts, first up, we've got UPST with a huge earnings gap up on enormous volume, greater than the IPO day even, and then a nice follow through day on this Friday. And overall, you could have used the kind of fish hook setup from Scott, but for me, I need a nice consolidation to manage risk against before I would consider taking up a position. But definitely this type of volume, especially during this type of market for growth, this catches my eye, and I really want to be focused on this stock. Moving on, we've got VUZI and nice breakout to all-time highs on nice volume on Thursday and Friday. You can see RSI confirming as well. So this has been a very strong stock, and you can see it pull back to the 50, bounce off that, had some inside days, and a nice move up from that point after it retook the 21 EMA. And next up, we've got MOGO, and this didn't quite break out and close at all-time highs on this Friday, but overall it's showing a lot of RS, great move up from the 21 EMA, and the RS line is in new high ground as well. TME, very strong breakout on this Friday on huge volume. Thursday, it was already showing something special, and this right here was a 3-bar breakout off the 50 SMA. This would have been a pretty good entry here. Bullish outside day as well, undercutting this low and then closing well above it. And overall, this looks great. Strong RS and a great overall looking chart as well. You can see it's broken out of its IPO due diligence phase. And then this was the first kind of longer term consolidation or short term consolidation above that point. Nice kind of upside reversal bars off the 50 here and here. And now it's confirmed to the upside. It looks very, very good. Zim, a recent IPO, also is looking very, very strong. It is a kind of IPO high tight flag here, with this day being the standard breakouts, and it's acted very, very well. Great move up, although I do believe they report earnings this week. So we'll see how that turns out. But overall, I think they're using blockchain technology in some respect when it comes to shipping. SI is also acting very strong, and once again, kind of the more blockchain crypto stocks are acting very, very strong in this market, and it has been chopping around here, but overall it's holding the 21 EMA, nice upside reversal on Friday, and basically forming a little bit of a consolidation here, if you can call 20% ranges consolidation below this all-time high. So I would like to see it really constrict here, consolidate, have an inside week, and then potentially it would be ready, but great volume coming in on this Friday. Although you do have to consider that a lot of options were expiring on this Friday as well when you look at this volume. And next up, we've got GRWG, and I would like to have a few more kind of weed-related stocks here because they are acting pretty well. Curleaf is doing pretty well. AYRWF is one I see a lot on Twitter, but overall, a lot of these stocks are kind of OTC stocks, which I don't really trade that much. But overall, these are acting pretty well. GRWG back above the 50 and 21 EMA, forming a little bit of a consolidation here. Once again, I would like to see it tighten up before I would consider an entry, but this is a potential pivot right here at about 55.5 or so. RVLV, which was a watchlist stock this past week, looks great. Just had a green line breakout on this Monday, a little gap and go action, and overall consolidated pretty well. Nice volume on this Friday as well on the upside reversal. VIPS continues to trend above the 10-day, looks very, very strong. MP retook the pivot here on Friday and had a great day, finishing right at the top of this range here on huge volume, and he could use this next week as a pivot. And once again, it's a little bit hard to define your risk because the ranges are about 14-15%. Moving on, we've got DKNG, which also looks very, very strong. If we've got this green line here, you can see this is a recent green line breakout. It undercut it and then reclaimed it once again. And overall, it's right near all-time highs. A nice upside reversal action on this Wednesday. And once again, finishing pretty strongly on the week with nice volume as well. Micron, you can see, is right near all-time highs above the 21 EMA. And overall, this is one of the strongest looking kind of semiconductors along with MAAT. And overall, looks pretty good. And overall is just trending along with its 21 EMA. GM also looks pretty good. You can see it broke out of this kind of consolidation here this past week. Looks pretty good. I don't like the look of this day right here, this Thursday. The kind of poor closing range and downside reversal bar on higher volume. But we'll see what happens. It's still holding above the 10-day moving average and above the pivots. Lyft as well is trending with its 10-day moving average right towards kind of 52-week highs, although it is right up against this potential point of resistance. So it would be a little bit logical if next week it just kind of goes sideways. AMAT as well, along with MU, is acting pretty well above the 21 EMA, and great fundamentals on this one, and we'll see how it acts, but nice volume this Friday as it undercut and reclaimed the 21 EMA. And lastly, we've got QFIN, which was having a very good week, really until this day right here, this Friday, which broke expectations a little bit. Ideally, you would have seen kind of follow through to the upside, but it has really pretty much gone straight off the bottom since the 50 SMA. So maybe a bit of consolidation here is expected, but overall looks strong right near all-time highs and great volume and price action. Very, very strong, really basically straight off the bottom from its 200 SMA from all the way down back here. So definitely want to watch. RS line is very close to all-time highs here. It did dip on this Friday, but definitely want to keep on your watch list. So that's a quick run through of the kind of stocks I'm watching that I deem potential leaders for the next uptrend. Obviously, this list can change every single day, and let me know any stocks I should add or take away from this list. And moving on, let's talk about my previous watch list and how it performed. If we sort by that weekly change, you can see that we did have some nice performers this week. ZDGE was up 41%. It had earnings, a nice move up here. SI was up 14.9%. RVLV up 7% as well. But we did have some poor performers as well. MRVI failed the breakout here. Simple undercut this pivot and reclaimed it on this Friday. Zebra just pretty much just kind of trended down, and it's now back under the 10 and 21 EMA. Twitter declined below that key moving average as well. And lastly, we had Futu, which didn't have the greatest reaction to earnings, even though they were quite strong. So this is a great example of really listening to the price action, because if you bought it just because the earnings growth was very, very strong and the sales growth was there as well, you would be underwater like 10% already. So you have to wait really until price confirms the fundamentals, however strong you may feel they are. I think that's very, very important. And at this point, it looks like it's got a meeting with its 50 SMA, and we'll see what happens right at that key moving average. But overall, we had 9 out of the 14 in the green, so pretty strong week. But once again, we'll see kind of what setups happen this week. So moving on, let's talk about sentiment. And starting with my surveys on Twitter, you can see we had a drop this week from 63.1% bullish, now back down to 49.5% bullish. And this is a promising sign. Fear is in the market, which is a good thing. And moving on to the NAAIM Exposure Index, we saw an increase this week from 48.62 back to 78.55. So I don't like seeing such a huge jump, but really this isn't quite close to the really danger levels. But we'll see how this acts in the coming weeks. And next up, we've got the Bulls versus Bears poll, and this did have a jump this past week. So once again, I would like to see this continue to trend down, showing fears back in the market, but we'll see what happens. And lastly, we've got the put call ratio, which is increasing. So that's a good sign. But once again, I'll be watching this very closely. And moving on to the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is Stock Market Closes Mixed. Will these 7 growth stocks produce smoking returns in 2021? And overall, they discuss how the Nasdaq recovered 0.8% on Friday, despite closing down 3% on that Thursday. And we'll see how it acts next week. And they discuss the S&P 500, how it had a little bit of selling late in the day. And they discuss a little bit the 10-year bond yield and how that affects the stock market. Moving on, they discuss a few different stocks that you should be watching. QFIN in mode is definitely one to watch as well. If you go to the chart, this looks very strong. You can see it's kind of consolidating, looks a little bit like AMAT, but it is holding above that 21 EMA, which means it's showing some RS relative to other tech stocks. But overall, I discuss WSM, which had a nice breakout, TME, which we discussed, UPST, ZIM we talked about, and looking at their current outlook, it is a confirmed uptrend, but we do have 5 distribution days on the Nasdaq and 6 on the S&P 500, so it's definitely up there, so keep an eye on that. And lastly, we've got the GMI signal from richardlmoglen.com, which is still green, and this is since March 10th, and the overall GMI score is a 4 out of 6, but we are, even though it is a green signal, we are in the 17th day of a short-term downtrend, basically due to how that's defined. But overall, taking everything into account, my current view is, I want to say in between a confirmed uptrend and an uptrend under pressure, because really the stocks that I want to trade aren't acting great. But given that the S&P 500 and IWM are so close to all-time highs, and there is a lot of stocks working over in that space, my current view is a confirmed uptrend. But I am being a little bit cautious with new buys. I'm starting with smaller than usual position sizes and managing my risk very tightly. So that's kind of my take on the market. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you guys in future videos.